Okay, welcome to section 10.5, and it's a bit windy outside, so you might hear the wind chimes going off a bit, sorry. And also the geese are near my window for some reason, so they might be honking a bit during the lesson. Alright, so the main goal for section 10.5, and it's a really small goal, it's only to know what the difference between common log and natural log, what they mean. So I did say, I believe, common log in the last video, and I'll get into that. I did explain it a little bit in the last video, but this is a little bit more in depth. So first off, there is this number called e. It's kind of similar to the number called pi. If you recall, pi is once again the approximation for 3.14, or that's the approximation for pi. We just give it the number pi because it's not possible to write that whole number down. It's a non-repeating decimal, and it's not ending or non-ending. Non-repeating means we never get to write the chance out like 3.14 repeating. If you recall, if you have 3, 3, 3 repeating, you can simplify that to 3.3 bar on top for repeating. Never repeats, so we can't do that. And it never ends. So because of that, we just use the approximation of 3.14. Now e is a similar kind of number. It's a non-repeating, non-ending decimal. Or non-ending. Sort of a simplistic term for that. So what is this number e? Well, the number e, we can approximate it out to usually 2.71 or 2. In the book, it's given as a longer approximation of 2.718281828459 and onwards. Once again, if you're ever giving an approximation, especially in Word, in any of your work, always include the squiggle equal sign. That means it's not the actual number, it's the approximation. Alright, and the number e is named after Leonhard Euler, who was a famous mathematician. He actually also went blind later on in life and was still doing a bunch of complex math in his head. I could not do that. I can write it down. Doing it in my head if I'm blind is a little bit harder. Anyways, he was a famous mathematician, and yeah, they named this letter E to honor him. Or this number E to honor him. Alright. So, the common log. What is the common log? Well, in our society, we are a base 10 number counting system. So because of that, the base 10 came up super often in logarithms, back when they were first starting to use logarithms and whatnot, coming up super commonly, or often. So everyone was writing base 10 a lot, and people were deciding, you know what, it's quite a bit to write base 10, we use it so much, why not let's give it a shorthand. So they gave it a shorthand. If you see log, just log, let me go ahead and give these both an argument. We'll give it an argument of a. If you see a log without anything at the base, you're allowed to assume that that must be 10. Just like when you see something like this, we know that this is technically the square root of 4, even though I didn't write that too. Just because square roots are used so often, the shorthand way for using square roots is to just do that instead of having to write the 2 all the time. Similar concept. So the next log we have is something called the natural log. And this comes from the approximation of e. Now that number e, which I said once again was similar to pi, now if you recall, pi is when we're talking about the ratio of the circumference of a circle, so the outside of a circle, the ratio of that and its diameter. That ratio is what gives us pi. So that shows up with circles. However, the number e shows up a lot in nature. So they show up in nature. They show up when you're charting out, let's see, growth or decay, like if you're talking about radioactive decay, or maybe the rate at which a body cools down. Like people use that when they're, I think it's criminology. If you're looking at a body, you can test the temperature of the body and determine the time of death based on how cold the body has gotten. That's sort of natural log, logarithmic. Kind of creepy, kind of interesting at the same time. Okay, so it shows up in nature, which is why we call it the natural log, and it uses base e. So log base e, it's the one that shows up in nature a lot when we calculate. So because this one shows up so often as well, just as the common log 10, they decided to also give it a shorthand. So log base e, if I shorthand it to natural log, they call it ln. So sometimes you'll see it as sort of a lowercase ln. I tend to not like writing it like that because that starts to look like a 1. So I use a scripted ln. I have known some people that use a capital L and then a lowercase n. You can do that. I just prefer the scripted L, just because it avoids looking like a 1. So it would be lna. So once again, log base 10, we rewrite it just as a log without a number near it. That's considered the common log. You can assume the base is 10. And then ln just stands for a log with a base e. Alrighty, so note, when we are solving logarithmic equations, that's a word. Let's say that again. When solving logarithmic equations, these two are the only log bases we can pick from. You might wonder what that means right now, but once again, I'll explain it when we get there. But when we're solving equations with logs, you can choose a base at certain times, but the only bases you're allowed to choose are base e or base 10. Once again, technically, you could choose any number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, so on. But the restrictions in this course, you have to choose base e or base 10. Alright, that was just the quick intro into common log and natural log. That's all we're covering in this section. Alright, if you have any questions, please send me an email or come by my office hour.